Kenny Lamberti is the Southeast Regional Director of the Best Friends Animal Society, and he spent the last 7 years working for the Humane Society of the United States. He was most recently the Vice President of the Companion Animals Department. Kenny originally came to the Humane Society to manage the Philadelphia campaign to end dogfighting. And that campaign turned into the campaign that's now called Pets for Life. He's also worked as a dog trainer and a kennel manager for the Animal Farm Foundation, and has a lot of experience in working with dog behavior. And Kenny's going to tell you about being a community organizer, and I think he's got a really great story to tell. So please welcome Kenny Lamberti.
Thanks. So first, I'm from Boston, so if anyone needs a translator for my accent, afterwards, I always picture someone standing off to the side like a sign language person, just making obscene gestures and wearing a scally cap. But I also wore all blue, because I wasn't totally sure what is Kentucky blue, but I have blue shoes, blue socks, blue pants, blue shirt, other blue unmentionables, but that wouldn't be appropriate to share with you. So I'm going to take a little different kind of path for my talk. I don't use a lot of slides. I have 2 slides. I have this and one other one. Because first of all, you're going to be at lunch. I know I've spoken at and attended a million conferences. Having people talk at you all day can get exhausting, and you can start to fade out. So I'm glad you get some food to keep your energy up. But I also want to have as much back and forth as you're willing to have. So I don't have a slide for questions at the end. If anyone wants to ask a question or has something to interject, just raise your hand. If you steal too much of my time, I'll just stop listening to you and start talking. But I'd love to have some interaction. I'm also going to look at this a little differently. Obviously, I work for Best Friends Animal Society, so we're very interested in the data and the statistics, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in some of my presentations later in the day, and Mark covered a lot of that. I want to be a little bit more take a slightly different approach and talk about the kind of philosophy and methodology of what we do. But the first thing I like to know is a little bit about the folks in the room, share a little bit about myself. I'm always, whenever I listen to a speaker, I like to know at least a little bit about the person. Because then I kind of understand, why should I even listen to this person in the first place? So I have a kind of unique path to animal welfare. I didn't grow up hoping and dreaming of being a veterinarian or anything like that. Like I said, I grew up in Boston. I grew up incredibly poor. I grew up in public housing. I grew up in foster system for a little while. I spent a little time homeless, bounced around in the streets, my parents would be upset at me at this, but I had a wildly dysfunctional family unit. But what I always had, I appreciate that, it's true. What I always had, ironically, was dogs. I'm 49 years old, so things were a little different in the 70s, in the early 80s, where I grew up. Dogs roaming around the neighborhood was kind of normal. People would open up their door, let Spike run out, maybe he'd come back the next day. No one thought that much about it, right? And this was in a big city in Boston. This wasn't just in a rural community. That was normal. So me, as someone who spent the majority of my early years on the streets, the stray dogs became my little crew. I used to call them my little dog posse. And because I was a little guy, I'm not that little now, but I was a little guy. I didn't grow till late, and my neighborhood was pretty rough, and I befriended all these dogs because they protected me. So when the savory characters in my neighborhood might be out to get me, I had a little pack of dogs around me. I started to learn how to communicate with the dogs, talk to the dogs. When I would have to kind of look for food, and I did. I found food wherever a homeless kid could find food. I shared it with the dogs. So I always had this incredible bond with dogs. I didn't know, 20, 30, 40 years later into my adult life that was going to become my life's work and my passion. But they were part of me. It was incredibly important to me. And I think that's important because sometimes we forget. We look around the room. We're a pretty tight monolithic group, right? And I am going to talk about some things that might make us uncomfortable, but I think that's important to talk about. If you look around, this room is pretty white. A lot of white people. Even more so than that, a lot of women, right? That's pretty much animal welfare. This room is very much a kind of analogy for what all of animal welfare is, whether you work at a big national group like Best Friends. Prior to this, I spent little over 7 years at the HSUS, or you work at a local shelter or a local rescue, it's predominantly white, right? But our world is not that way. Most people in here, I'm going to assume, have at least some sort of job, have a home, have at least enough minimal money to put food in their refrigerator, get back, you're able to get here today, right? You're at least getting by reasonably well. Some better than others maybe, right? But you're at least getting by pretty well. That's also not our world. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who don't even have that. And they all look different. There's white folks like that who live in rural communities. There's black folks, Latino folks, Asian folks. There's gay, straight, male, female. Our world is incredibly diverse, and it's getting more so that way. Doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Doesn't matter if you love Trump or you hate Trump. Doesn't matter where you vote. Doesn't matter what sports team you like, although we all know it has to be UK, right, or in this neighborhood. By the way, we have a connection because Coach Cal, I'm sure you guys all love, started at UMass, where I'm from Boston. So we have a little connection there. So he wouldn't have him down here winning all these titles if it wasn't for what he did at University of Massachusetts. I played college basketball for a year too, so I'm down with you people. So I want to talk about the world we live in. I want to talk about how, to be frank, how the miserable failure we've done at connecting to the world that we live in. How many people here, and if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to call you out and call you a liar, at one time in their life have said this phrase or heard someone say it? I work with animals because people suck. Yeah, everyone, right? And you know what? Some people do suck. It's the world we live in. But one thing I can tell you for sure is the people that suck all look different. There's just as many sucky-ass white people as there are all different kinds of people. It's true. But the vast majority of people, the overall majority of people, no matter where they're from, whether they have a job or not, what culture, what gender, sexual orientation they have, wake up in the morning and don't have a plan to hurt, neglect, or harm animals. The small little micro group of people that do that, I'm incredibly grateful that we have incredibly hardworking, brave animal control people and humane law enforcement people to take those suckers out of our life and put them away so they don't have cats and dogs anymore. They're incredibly valuable, but that's this much of the pie. Those people are this small. But we dedicate a lot of time to thinking about them, don't we? We talk a lot about, someone asked earlier, so how do you protect, if we adopt a dog or cat, that they're not going to end up in the wrong hands, right? We create policies and programs based around the anomaly, not the norm. If you adopted 20 dogs, I don't have data to back this up, I have personal experience to back it up, there's some data to back this up. You adopted 20 dogs today, without even looking at the people you adopt them to. No form, and we're going to talk about open adoptions in my session later, so I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole. 20 dogs randomly, just to 20 people who showed up, you didn't know who they were. Odds are, the vast majority of them would go off to live fine, happy lives. Yeah, maybe 3'd come back, maybe 4'd come back. So what? Are we going to create policies to not allow those other 14 to get homes because we're so worried about what might happen to the other 3 or 4? That doesn't make any sense. It's bad business. If you worked at Apple, you'd get fired if that was your business plan. You would. And I know it's hard. This is hard to grasp these things because who loves animals? If there's any way to get a guaranteed hand raise, that's it. So we all love animals. And of course, I agree. I agree. Whoever asked that question, I'm not calling you out. Earlier I heard the question. I have the same worry as you. I worry the same thing. I just adopted a new dog. I lost my dog in May. I adopted a new dog just the other day. He looks like, he's a pit bull, bully breed dog. He's got a huge head, cropped ears. He's massive. He's a beast. And I've only had pit bulls. If you could see my legs, they're tattooed all over me. I love bully breed dogs. I always have. Those were the ones I saw in my community, right? I don't love them for any other reason other than that's what I got used to as a kid. I don't love them because they look tough. I don't love them because of any other reason. I love them because when I was a child, roaming around, those were the kind of dogs that I walked around with in my neighborhood. If they were beagles walking around, I'd probably adopted a beagle. You know what I mean? Those were the dogs I met, right? And so we're going to get back to talk a little bit about the pit bull thing because I think it's something that requires discussion. But I want to talk more about people. The term companion animals, right? Do we all agree that that is the term that defines a cat or a dog? They're a companion animal. They're not livestock. They're not wildlife. They're not exotics, right? They're companion animals. What are they companions to? Aliens? Turtles? What are they companions to? They're companions to human beings. And what I see after a couple decades working in this field is, do we think, also the term community, we're going to talk about community later. This is a community in here, right? This is a community of animal advocates, animal welfare professionals, people who love animals, right? But what is our actual community? Is the community just this group? Is the community just the people who live in our cul-de-sac, or live in our zip code, or come to our PTA meetings? No, our community is also the people that we never engage with. Our community is also the people that maybe we have some prejudgments about. That's our community too. And sometimes we develop opinions. This is human nature. When I walked up on the stage today, or you read my bio, or you heard when you read about me, you all started forming somewhat of an opinion about me. Maybe you thought I was an abrasive, stupid Yankee. Maybe you thought, what's up with this guy and his tattoos? You developed opinions about Mark when you heard about LA. You said, oh, he's an LA guy, he's got a cool haircut. You know what I mean? He's an, we're all doing that. I'm doing that to you right now. It doesn't make us evil. It doesn't make us prejudiced or racist. It makes us human. The problem is when we let those prejudgments dictate who we think is worthy of taking one of our dogs home from our shelter or our rescue, that's a problem. That's not okay. And not because it makes you bad people, not because I'm here to spew you some liberal crap, which I'm not even a liberal as a voter, by the way. Just as a side note, you may have made an assumption about that. I'm also not a conservative, so you can figure out what I might be. But that's where it's a problem, because this is a job. This isn't a hobby. I don't care if you're an all-volunteer rescue organization or you're a $100,000 municipal facility, right? This is our job. We have a job. What is the job at hand? For Best Friends, it's to end the unnecessary death of healthy and adoptable animals in shelters. That's Mark and I's job. That's Akeisha and I's job. That's our job. That's what we've claimed as our space, right? If you're a rescue group, right, think about the word rescue for a minute. Who are we rescuing them from? What do we think about the people we're rescuing them from? When we imagine them in our minds, what do they look like? I'm not going to make you answer it, because I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but be honest with yourself for a second. Be really honest with yourself for a second. If you close your eyes and you think about where we're rescuing the dogs from, do they come from your neighbors? Come from people who look like you? Yeah, that's what. There's a million different answers, and that's why I intentionally don't want anyone to give me their answer, but it's okay that you did. That's why I like you Kentuckians. You kind of remind me of Boston folks. You're not shy at all. But I just want to think about it. And that's what I want to spend the rest of our time doing. This is my only slide. Because I want us to spend some time looking in the mirror. We spend a lot of time looking externally, right? Why do people give up their pets? How many, and I won't make you answer this either, I guarantee you there's groups in here that don't like other groups. There's groups in here that bash other groups on Facebook. There's groups in here that say that group has it easy because blah, 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 blah. There's groups in here that say, well, we take all the overlap from that group because of blah, 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 blah. We spend all this time looking outside our walls. How much time do we spend looking internal, turning the mirror on ourselves, right? We look at whatever statistics we choose to believe these days or not. Whatever the statistic is, there's way too many dogs and cats dying. We all can agree with that, right? We talk about adoptions. My session later, I'm going to talk a lot about pet acquisition. Where do people get their pets? Blah, blah, blah. How many people think pit bulls, again, you can answer, raise your hand if you want. You can scream things at me, whatever makes you float your boat. Pit bull type dogs are harder to adopt than other type dogs. It is what it is, right? It's just, I think there's some truth to that. Is it because they're bad dogs? Does anyone believe that? Anyone thinks there's anything wrong with them? No. Are there communities, again, maybe look internally into your internal mirror here for a second. Are there communities that you can think of, maybe pit bulls are a little more popular and desirable? Do they come to you a lot to adopt dogs? Do you go to them at all to adopt dogs? I would guarantee you, now that I've worked in 48 of the 50 states in this country and run a lot of high-level programs, and now at Best Friends, I hear this, there's not one place I've gone where the pit bull thing and trying to get pit bulls out of the shelter in combination with all the pit bulls we take in doesn't come up as a problem, right? What's also true in all those very same communities is that I could, and I will bet you, A, because I've done it so I can back it up, I could pack a bunch of those pit bulls into a van, by the end of the day, find a part of your community, this is your community, where I get them all adopted before lunch. But yet, what are they doing? They're rotting away in kennels. Or they're dying, even worse. And the truth is, whether we want to admit it or not, I'm a staunch believer in truth, cold, hard, ugly truth when it needs to be sometimes. Life in a kennel, life in a rescue sucks. The most beautiful shelter you have, the most dedicated, loving, compassionate, amazing volunteers and staff you have are not a home. It's not a family. It's not a good life. Dogs hate it. Why do you think they spin around? Why do you think they chew on things and bark and whine and cry? Because it sucks. It's miserable. So then someone comes in, maybe they don't have a lot of money, maybe they have no experience with trying to train a dog. They do the thing that we begged them to do. They didn't go to a pet store, they didn't go to a puppy mill, they didn't go to Craigslist, they came to you for a dog, right? What do? Do you have a fenced yard? Have you ever had a dog before? Can you fill out this 17-page form? Blah, blah, blah. We ask them a million questions. Blah, blah, blah. Then imagine they say, oh, I want a big dog with cropped ears, one of them big-headed, block-headed dogs. I love those. Those are my favorite, right? And you go, oh, well, you're going to have to take a 3-week training class. You know what I mean? We're going to have blah, blah, blah. Is he going to live? What's your family? Do you have children? Do you have other dogs in the house? Do you have a cat? Do you have a fenced-in yard? We ask them all these questions, right? What happened 9 times out of 10? If they ever get there in the first place, right? They don't end up adopting the dog. Now I want you to do another little imaginary thing for yourself here. And this will make you uncomfortable. That's why I want you to share it. Be honest with yourself. Imagine that's a 19-year-old black kid with cornrows. And he comes in and says, I want the biggest headed pit bull you got. How are you going to feel? Does he have any shot to get that dog from you? Does he have the same shot to get that dog from you that you have? If you walk in and say the exact same words? Probably not. And do I understand that dogfighting happens? My whole job was dogfighting for a while. I'm not going to go down a path. I went around to 6 schools with Michael Vick to talk to kids about dogfighting. I know more about dogfighting than I wish I knew, and not because I think I'm cool or I'm smart, because I dedicated time to it. I likely know a lot more than a lot of the people in this room, because that was my job. Not because I'm brilliant, just because it was my job for a long time. I will tell you one thing right now. The chances that someone's going to come adopt a dog for you and turn it into a bait dog, which is basically a myth, bring it to a dog fight, is incredibly slim. Could it happen? Is it possible? It could. Will someone in here have a story of that happening once? Maybe. But should we base everything we do on that one story? Should we imagine every person that looks a certain way, that asks a certain question, makes a certain statement to us, it has bad intentions? Oh, we're never going to get anywhere if we do that. We're never going to get ahead. We haven't used the public. We haven't considered people. We haven't removed our own judgment, and we've let that impact the way we do this work. And I believe, in every fiber of my bones, that if we don't solve that, we're going to be sitting here in 10 years having these same stupid conversations. We're going to be sitting, the people that have to put these dogs down every day in the shelters are going to have to go through that miserable, thankless, heartbreaking experience over and over and over and over again. We're not going to fix it. We're going to fail. Best Friends is going to fail if we don't engage the community. I have a section later on community engagement. I met Mark. What Mark started to tell you, but didn't tell the whole story, is I met Mark in Philadelphia. I was working for the HSUS. He was working for the Pennsylvania SPCA. And we did an in-depth work with the HSUS to find the area that was in the most need. It was North Philadelphia area called Hunting Park. 93% of the people that live there were living at or below the poverty level, and it looked even worse than that. Every movie you've ever seen about poverty, about the inner city, that's what the picture in your head, that's what North Philadelphia looked like. When I started doing block by block community organizing in that neighborhood, before we did any services, what kind of dogs do you think I saw a lot of there? Fully breed type dogs, right? Do you think a lot of them were spayed and neutered? No, none of them were spayed and neutered, or very few of them were spayed and neutered. Everyone I asked in Philadelphia, not Mark, which is why we became good friends and started working here. All the other animal welfare groups, all the volunteers, all the people who love the animals, when I asked them, why do you think that's true? Why is this one little neighborhood so much different than all the other areas of Philadelphia? Why are all the dogs intact here? When what we know is close to 80% of the owned cats and dogs in this country right now are spayed and neutered, right? I like to think partly because of Bob Barker and The Price is Right. But jokingly, but really it's because of all the work of people like you. We've done amazing, unfathomable work in animal welfare since the 70s. We've brought shelter death down. We've made spay and neuter a cultural norm for some people in some communities. We've done really amazing work. But we missed some huge parts of our community. We missed some huge segments of the population. And then we turned around and we blamed them for that. It wasn't that community's fault. You know whose fault it is? I'm not going to point at you, but we're the same community. It's our fault. Because instead of saying, hey, we have all this information, we have all these resources, we have all this knowledge about the healthiest, the best way to kind of share our lives with dogs, we didn't share it with those communities. We never went out there. I can guarantee you, and I know again from personal experience working on the ground, door to door, porch to porch, yard to yard, project to project, everywhere from Los Angeles to Chicago to Philadelphia to Atlanta, Georgia, to Milwaukee, Detroit. I've worked all around the country in the poorest neighborhoods. I'm still waiting for the person to come up to me and tell me, yeah, I just want to wake up. I love having my dog skinny and itching with fleas and starving. I haven't met that person yet. What I have met is hundreds of thousands of people who say, I don't know what to do. I keep putting motor oil on them because my grandfather said if you put motor oil on the dog, it'll keep the fleas away. You think they put the motor oil on because they want the dog to be miserable? What is their intention? They want the dog to feel better. Why do you think the dog's in the backyard sometimes? Because they hate it? Maybe it's in the, huh? Because it's got motor oil on it. Or it's got fleas, and when they bring the dog in the house, it makes everyone itch. Or maybe because there's 17 people living in the house and there's not enough freaking room. Right? Why do you think they don't walk the dog? Because they don't know how to walk a dog. It's pulling them down the street. They've never walked a dog. Their uncle, their aunts, their grandparents kept dogs chained up out in the yard. That's the cultural norm in that community, right? But us, instead of trying to say, hey, you know what? I've got 17 staff people, or I've got volunteers and friends who know all this amazing stuff about dog training. In the course of 1 hour, I could help you live more comfortably, healthy, happily, peaceful life with your dog. We don't do that. We take them away. We rescue them, right? Because that's what we do. And we find it a better home in a different community. And then what happens? The people in that community, how do they then view the animal welfare people? Are you their friend? Are you their ally? Are they someone they can turn to when they need help for their dog? No. They're the people that are going to come take my freaking dog away. They're the people that are going to make me feel bad about myself when I already have a crappy life. They're the people that are going to make me feel judged. They're the people that are going to make me feel less than. Is there any hope of building a relationship with people from those communities if that's the dynamic we create? And I'm not telling you, I do not believe this world is sunshine and rainbows. I don't believe everyone is good. I don't believe that. I'm a pretty cynical son of a whatever I told you, I grew up in the projects. I've spent time in juvenile detention as a kid. I've gone through a lot of my life. But what I still know, in spite of all that, is the vast majority of people wake up and want to do right. They want to do good. They want to take good care of their dog or their cat. They want their dog to be happy, and they love that dog. You might not see that because you spent 20 minutes in the backyard appalled at what you saw. It's appalling to me too. But you're not there when maybe the kids come home from school, or when the person walks outside with the little food that they have and gives leftover rice and beans to the dog in the backyard. You're not there when that happens. But it happens, because I actually have been there when that happens. And I did it. And this isn't to call us out, it's to wake us up, because I was the same way. You know, I don't like to share too many stories about my life, but I'll share one because it changed mine. When I was 11 years old, I was homeless. I was living in an abandoned car. I had 3 dogs living with me. At the time, I didn't know what a pit bull was, but now I know they were all pit bulls. And there was one who I named Spook because he was pure white. He was like albino. And I lived in a car, cold winter in Boston, living in a car, blankets, leftover trash, food, whatever we could find. I kind of thought it was awesome, actually, so don't feel bad for me, because I didn't think it sucked. I thought it was kind of great. I had no rules. I could do whatever I wanted. I had these cool dogs to hang out with. It was just, that was my reality, right? So I'm not looking for any kind of gold star, for sure, or certainly any pity. But so we were living, that was our life. One day I had this banging on the car window. I look up, all I see is someone with a badge, right? Which is scary. But then I noticed it said something like animal something something on it. So it was an animal control officer. Banged on the window. Now, when you're a young kid living on the streets in Boston, it's scary, so I had a knife with me all the time, right? So I immediately put the knife like this, and I said, I'm gonna stab this son of a, right? Because I was terrified, not because I was mean, because I was terrified. So I rolled down the window in this beat up old car, and his name was Al, Officer Al, still keep in touch with him. And he says, I was like this, and he knew I was scared, you know? And he said to me, don't, relax. And I said, you're not taking my dogs. It's the first thing I thought of. And if I get choked up on this, I'm not gonna cry in front of strangers. So he says to me, I wanna talk to you. Can you come out of the car? He said, leave the dogs in the car, because I don't know if they're aggressive, because they were very protective of me. And so I get out of the car, and he says, he told me what his job was, and he said, I can't let these dogs live like this, they're sick. And then he said, this is the part chokes up, he said, and I can't let you live like this. So I was like, no one gives a shit about me or these dogs, screw you, we're good, we got it covered, right? So what he did was, he brought me to the local animal shelter. I'd never seen an animal shelter before in my life. Didn't know what happened at an animal shelter. My assumption was that's where they went to kill all the dogs, right? I had no idea what went on there. So he showed me all the kennels, and all I saw was dogs. And I was like, wow, he told me all about it. He spent the whole day with me, bought me lunch, and he built a relationship with me. Then he said to me, I'm gonna make a deal with you. I'm gonna let you keep one. I'm gonna take the other two. I'm gonna take them to the vet, get them taken care of. If they're okay, he was honest with me. He said, if they're not mean, I said, well, they are mean. He said, we're gonna try to get them homes, but if we can't, I wanna tell you why. Because you see all these other dogs in here, they're not mean, and they can get a home, right? He educated me, shared this information with me. And then he said, I'm gonna get you into a shelter and find one that'll let you keep the one dog that you pick. It changed my life. Not because what he did for the dogs, not because of the shelter visit. What changed my life is it taught me about compassion and understanding and not to judge. He could have easily, would have been completely within his rights to take all those dogs, bring me down to Child Protective Services. I guarantee I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have chosen this line of work. I do this work because of him. And who knows what happened to the dogs, but it was the way he treated me. He was kind to me. He was nice to me. I was a dirty little scrubby little punk. I was a jerk, and I was not nice to him. I was cussing him out, and even when I was in the back of his car, I was trying to figure out what I could steal, because when you gotta survive, right? So I was not nice to him. So this isn't some fluffy after-school special story. I don't know how to this day he didn't just bash me in the head with his billy club or shoot me. I would have. I was a jerk. I was a jerk when I was a kid. I'm still a little bit of a jerk now sometimes. At least I hope my coworkers don't think that. But so I share that story not because I share it because I think it's important. Every day, you guys have the opportunity to build the next animal advocate. Every day you have the opportunity to engage a new community, to find new people who can bring into what I like to call, and the folks at HSUS coined this term, so I'll give credit, the army of the kind. It's one of my favorite lines. And I think every day we have that opportunity. And I think we let it go. We let it slip by every day. And I understand how hard this work is. It is hard. This is the hardest work I've ever done. I was a teacher, I was a social worker, I've worked in gang violence, I worked in the LGBT movement for a while. I've done a lot of hard work. This is the hardest work I've ever done, because this is not, this is literally life and death work you guys do every day. Every day, the lives and death of sentient beings, beautiful animals who mean no one any harm, are at stake because of the work you all do. This is hard. You know, it's why I think we all like tequila. This is hard-ass work, man. Like, it's tough. You know, I won't want to tell anyone, but these days, I just want to keep a bottle by my bed. I don't actually drink that much. But if I did, you have to. That's a whole other story. That's a different meeting. But the point is, this is really hard work. So I don't blame people. I really don't. It's hard when you're faced with the day-to-day of cleaning the kennels, of bringing the dogs in, getting the cats out, all the stuff. When you're trying to raise money, it's exhausting. So sometimes it's easy to take the easy route, right? It's easy to make the assumption. It's easy to look for an out. It's easy to kill them. It hurts our heart, but it gets them out of the way. It does. And I know it sounds cold and miserable to say that, but that's what this movement has turned into. And Mark has educated me a lot. I was not a no-kill person. I've never been a guy flying the no-kill flag until I started to listen to Mark. And I started realizing there is a difference between euthanasia and killing. You know, because I thought to myself, I look at a dog on a Monday, and I say, oh, what a sweet dog. That dog's really cool. He's a happy, fun dog, makes someone a great pet. And then on Wednesday, he's dead. And I say to myself, so if he was a good dog on Monday, why is he a dead dog on Wednesday? The dog didn't change. What changed with the circumstances around the dog, right? And we spend all this time talking about the best way to euthanize, kennel enrichment, animal behavior, community cats, and blah, blah, blah. And the shift that's starting to happen, and I think my organization, Best Friends Now, is leading this shift, this paradigm shift, is to not get to the point where we have to make that decision, right? To do the life-saving work that keeps them alive. And one of the biggest ways we do that is by engaging our communities more effectively, more efficiently, without judgment, with an open mind and open heart, and bring them into the fold. Make them part of our army, all of them, not just the people that look like us, think like us, and live by us, and share the mission already. Look how many of us we already have. Animal welfare has tons of money. So when we ask people at every meeting, what are the obstacles? Fundraising, need more money. We have so much money. My soon-to-be wife works in public health. Her organization is half the size of my organization. And when I look at the work they do and the impact they have, I'm blown away by it. They basically connect people and communities with public health. It's the same thing we're trying to do, right? Connect communities with pet health, information and services, right? They're so much better at it than us. And every time I do any type of speaking engagement, I want two things to happen. Is one, me not to fall off the stage. Two, I want people to leave and do something different. Do something new, do something they were scared of, do something they thought wouldn't work when they leave here. I've gone to 1 million conferences, I'm sure a lot of you all too. I've spoken at most of them, and I always wondered to myself, this was an awesome day, I loved it. People were engaged, there was all this great kind of information sharing and networking. And I always wonder, when people go back, do they just keep doing the same stuff they've been doing all along? Not that the stuff we're doing is bad or wrong, it's amazing, it's incredible. You guys are doing incredible work. But we're kind of doing the same things over and over and over and over. We're not gonna, most shelters were built adoption forward, right? Like the adoption floor is beautiful, state of the art, beautiful, it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. How many people here work in a shelter? Like a brick and mortar shelter? How many of you have paid employees whose job is just to do community outreach in the community? How many staff? One or two, maybe? One or two? Yeah. How many kennel attendants and adoption counselors and vet techs and other, exponentially more, right? So, in one of my presentations later, I'm going to talk about what's next. What's the future of animal welfare, right? Where are we going with this? We've been spaying and neutering our brains out and trying our best to adopt our brains out for how many decades? A lot of them, right? And rescuing and adopting, spay and neutering. Those things are still important, so don't get me wrong for a minute. I'm not saying those things aren't important, they're incredibly important. How much time, resources, energy have we dedicated to community engagement? True community engagement, not just the people who we're comfortable with, the entire community, what I mentioned before. Very little, some none, right? But there's this army of people out there, they're just waiting on you. The beauty of cats and dogs that I find is no matter where you are, if you're in Brooklyn, New York, if you're in Appalachia, if you're on a Native Peoples reservation in New Mexico, if you're in Detroit, if you're in rural Kentucky, you will find cats and dogs. Cats and dogs break every single barrier that exists in our society, every barrier. And the vast majority, 90-something upward percent of those cats and dogs are actually doing okay in the community they're in. Those cats are doing okay before you found them and trapped them. They were doing okay. We can just make them make less cats, put them back, right? And not for nothing, the dog that you see that day that's maybe living out in the backyard that looks a little bit skinny, isn't that you know, how long do you think that dog's been living that way before you found him? A while, probably, right? So what if, this is some challenges I want to put out to the people. What if our first thought was, okay, my dog right now is living in my beautiful apartment in DC. I paid someone to come walk him. My fiance's there. He eats raw food. He's got fish oil. He's living the life of Riley. He lives better than I do. I eat Captain Crunch. He eats salmon, right? Every day. He's the king of the, he's on top of the world. He's the king of the world, right? But you know why that is? Because until we address the chances that we're going to ever create a society that there isn't people living at different levels is, I'm going to say, zero, right? There's always going to be people living at a lower level, in a level of poverty, the quality of life, and people living at an obscenely high level, and then people everywhere along the way, right? As long as that's true, that's the same thing's going to be true for dogs and cats, right? So to expect that all dogs are going to live in this fantasy utopian la-la land where they get to sleep on a couch and have a dog walk under a dog sitter and eat the best food and, you know, wear sweaters and do all that stuff, it's mentally deranged. It's insane. But that's what we expect. So that's why we act the way we act when the person comes to our place and wants to adopt a dog. We have this vision of how they should live. I hate the word should. I wrote a paper in graduate school about the word should. It makes my head spin and pop off. Because it's never going to happen, right? So if we start thinking that if the people we're looking at are living at this level, how can we expect their dog to live up here? Well, we don't kill those people, right? We create programs to try to help those people. The thought is never, hey, man, I can't let people like this, let's kill them. No one would ever think that because it's ludicrous. What we do, we do a shitty job at it, but what we attempt to do is try to raise the level of care, right? Whenever there's a group that's suffering, we try to, and all parties do this, I believe this true. Again, not to get politically engaged there because that's a hornet's nest. But I think both sides of the aisle and the majority of people don't want people to live miserable lives and suffer, right? So we might have different ideas of how to do it, but the goal is to try to get people living a better quality of life, right? At least not be suffering anymore, right? So when we meet that person, we meet that family, what if we just try to raise the level of care enough where it's more acceptable? What if we just get the dog heartworm treatment? What if we just get them some flea and tick medication? What if we get a food bank going, right? What if we get just a leash, which you probably all have lying around? I think I got 6 of them in my car, right? Simple things like that. We do that, and you know what that's called? That's intake diversion. That's community outreach. Then guess what? If we do that, 2 things happen. First, from our perspective, we don't end up with the dog, right? It costs money for all y'all to take care of dogs, right? Takes up a kennel space, 1 less dog we can take care of, right? That's why we're all drowning and overwhelmed, right? So now that's 1 less to add to that equation. Here's the second most important thing that happens. We just built an ally with that family. Now that family, we leave them our information, and they say, wow, those awesome animal people came. They treated my dog doesn't have fleas and ticks anymore. They gave him this magical pill, so now he doesn't have heartworm anymore, because now he can actually gain weight when I feed him, right? And they said they'd check in on me next month to see if I was all right. And I got their magnet on my refrigerator. That whole thing takes 10 minutes. It takes one human being going to that place, leaving their 4 walls of their building, and prioritizing it within their budget, in their programming, and in their staff time, going to that family, having that conversation, not being an asshole about it, not being judgmental about it, even if it pisses you off, because it should, it pisses me off too. Like I said, I'm not trying to create a fantasy world where it doesn't bother me. It does bother me. But like if I worked at Apple, or worked at a big corporation, I have to have a business strategy. I have to be strategic, and I can't drift from my mission. My goal is for me to stop taking in so many animals because I can't take care of them all. I can't get them adopted. I can't have enough staff to walk them. I can't feed them. I can't house them, blah, blah, blah. So my goal is to keep that pet there. Even if I'm a terrible person, Think from a business and strategic perspective, what makes more sense. Keep that pet where it is. And now I've built an ally. Don't you think that person's gonna tell their neighbor? Or all the people in their community, their cousins, their uncles, their sisters, their church members, gonna say, hey, if you need help, I didn't even know this. Did you know that, Knucklehead Humane Society of America down the street helps people with animals? I didn't even know that they existed, right? I know some of this sounds like I'm beating us up, because I'm beating myself up for this too, because I did the same thing for a long time. But this is the shift we're in the midst of having. And what I want to challenge all you all, is there any executive directors here today, or people who lead organizations, make final decisions? I want to challenge you guys more than anyone. When you go through your budgets, and you go through your staff, blah, 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 if you don't now, to consider having people dedicated to community outreach, and considering putting in a community outreach program that does that. That goal isn't to confiscate animals. That goal is to provide resources and information in a non-judgmental way and build allies in that community. Because you will never, I can tell you right now, in Philadelphia, when I met Mark, there was a community that was, maybe a quarter mile from your building? Not even, it actually was. They were in this neighborhood, right? This is what I do, so I created something called Lock the Block, and it was a community organizing that I didn't really invent. I stole it from the civil rights movement in the 60s, basically, but I put some tweaks in it to gear it to animal work, and we started something called Lock the Block, Strategic Outreach Plan. We were gonna kind of get this whole neighborhood to know we existed. We didn't have a building. My team didn't have a building. And the first thing I wanted to do is everyone know that we existed and create a partnership with a willing partner who had a facility who could do spay neuters, they let us do dog training classes in their building. They provided spay neuters to all our clients. If and when we met someone who wanted to adopt a pet, we adopted them an altered pet, go into the community with the resource. That community, which when I got there in 2010, 87% of the clients we met had intact dogs. Even more than further the opposite of what the number is, right? 80% of dogs and cats in this country that are owned or fixed, roughly, 87% were intact. 1% of people in that community said they adopted a dog from a shelter or a rescue, but there was dogs everywhere, right? That was late 2010. Early 2012, I was getting ready to leave Philadelphia. We did data for just the area we worked, right? In the area we met, 93% of the pets when we left were altered. Cultural shift, cultural norm. And the only reason that happened, and I know for a fact, it wasn't because we had expert dog trainers, it was because the community, we built a relationship with that community. So what they did is the same thing all of you do. We do. When they knew the resources existed and they had access to the same information, they made the same good, positive choice, almost across the board 100% of the time. And it was a real learning experience. I knew it anecdotally in my head that would be true because I was one of those kids, but I couldn't prove it to anybody else, right? And what I started then, I really lost my mind. And I ended up in places like this, screaming this at every conference I could for the last 8 years, right? Is when people have access to information and resources and aren't judged and are treated with kindness and fairness, they make the right choice. It's human nature, and it's foolproof. You want a guaranteed bet? Go to your bookie and bet on that. It'll work every single time. But if you don't get out there, you're never going to find out. And you're going to keep repeating the same thing. Bring them in, try to get them out, kill the ones we can't move, right? Bring them in, try to get them out, kill the ones we can't move. Bring them in over and over and over and over and over. You're going to come to a conference next year. We're going to have the same conversation. You're going to go to the Best Friends Conference, have the same conversation. You're going to go to Expo, HS shows, have the same conversation over and over and over. You're going to drink more tequila. It's like that old commercial in the 80s, right? I do more cocaine so I can work more hours, so I can do more cocaine so I can work more hours. No? There's a commercial in the 80s. I don't do cocaine. But it was a commercial in the 80s that was very popular. It was one of those, this is your mind on drugs things. No? Yeah. I'm old. I try. I'm immature, so I don't seem old, but I'm old. That's why I grow the white beard, so people don't think I'm 12. And I really want to challenge you guys to take this on. And the second, or third, fourth, I forgot where I am now on my list, but one of the most amazing things that'll also happen is you'll be amazed at the volunteers you get. You will get people I want to share one other story because it's not about me. I think I have to 1:15. I can talk forever because I'm a big, loud Italian guy from Boston, so someone stop me when I'm supposed to stop. Just throw something at me, I don't care. One more story, and then I'm going to stop talking and try to get some feedback from you guys. I met a kid who Mark knows named DeBelem Brookins. When I met DeBelem was 18. He's bigger than me, African-American kid. I met him doing community outreach. I wouldn't have met him any other way. This huge, beautiful pit bull named Ace, right? Ace he was awesome. I wish I could have stolen from him. This dog was awesome, right? This kid loved dogs. Went to his house, really poor area. He had 6 other pit bulls. I started meeting all his friends. I think Ace was the father of every pit bull in Philadelphia. Ace was a G. He was taking care of business, right? And so Ace knew everybody. So I said, DeBelem, now most animal people would have cringed, right? This is our biggest nightmare. Not to me. I'm like, that's all I saw was opportunity. If I can get this dude on my team, like, it's a wrap. I'm good, right? So first thing I did, I said, DeBelem, what are you doing? I bought him some pizza, took him to the PSPCA, showed him around. He'd never been to the shelter. He lived, walking distance away from it. One problem. He saw all these pit bulls, and he literally went like this. He goes, I think that's one of mine. I think that's one of mine. I think that's one of mine. And he was like, what's going to happen to him? Like, some of them are going to die, dude. He started crying. Fast forward, brought him on as a volunteer. I'm a training and behavior person. I mentored him for a while to learn some basics. He became my assistant in my dog training classes. Eventually, he fell in love. He's like, I didn't know animal welfare was a thing. I didn't know that people did this for a job. I said, you want a job? So I'll give you a job, $30,000 a year. That's $1 million to this kid, right? I said, but unfortunately, this is where I gotta hold some accountability. Ace has got to get neutered. I'm not gonna pressure you to do it. I want it to be your choice. I only want you to do it if you feel good about it. Now I have all this information. He said, I don't think I can do it. Like, I get people puppies. I was like, no problem. I didn't pressure him. A couple weeks go by, a month goes by, still working with me. I didn't kick him out. I kept him in the program, kept him as a friend. One night, 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone rings. I'm not a technology person, so I didn't have an iPhone. I had a flip phone. True, 2012. And so he goes, Kenny, it's DeBelem. I'm like, why? First I'm like, why the hell you call me at 2 o'clock in the morning? He said, I woke up, I had a nightmare, and I was picturing all those dogs getting killed. Can I make an appointment to get Ace fixed? This makes me cry too. I was like, I'll meet you there in the morning. I went to the PSPCA, I begged the medical staff, I said, listen, I know you guys are booked, can you please get this pit bull fixed for me today? Like, I'll pay triple, I don't care what you gotta do. Took him down, we got him fixed. DeBelem got hired, became a community organizer, and became the Pied Paper for spay neuter in North Philly. I can track back thousands of people who got their dogs spayed neutered because of DeBelem. That wouldn't have happened if I didn't bring DeBelem into the team. And I couldn't put aside to because it pissed me off too. I hated him, like, oh my God, stop making more pit bulls. The world doesn't need more pit bulls. Stop it. And every night I would go like this. But I was like, I know I have to be patient. I have to work with this kid because he loved dogs. Not for 1 second would he want something bad to ever happen to a dog. He didn't know any of this stuff. So he came to that conclusion on his own because I gave him time and I shared the information with him. I brought him into the fold. Years later, I left Philadelphia in 2013 or so, and I moved on to do a lot of other things. And I check in with DeBelem once in a while, and now he works at the Philadelphia Zoo, and he still goes around the community helping people with their dogs. I mean, and the impact of that is exponentially more than what we can do with we could give you a $20,000 grant tomorrow to do more spay neuters. I'm not saying it's not important. That's great. We want to do it. We do it. Not everybody, so chill out. But the impact of DeBelem, how many people do you think now DeBelem knows who I'll never meet, who when they get a pet, they're going to, just like us, make the choice, oh, of course I got to get him spay neutered. That's normal. That's what DeBelem told me to do. Cultural shift, cultural norm. It happened to all of us. Everyone goes from a point of not knowing to knowing about something. Maybe you grew up with a racist parent, but then maybe you met someone who was a different race who you bonded with and showed you something else. No, you're not racist, maybe. And that's what you'll pass on to your children, right? There's certain things we're not going to fix, I don't think, ever. Whether you believe in it or not, something's wrong with the environment. We might not be able to fix that. I don't think we're going to fix poverty. I don't think we're going to fix racism. Dogs and cats is our fault. This is our problem. We screwed this up. Human beings, we from the time we domesticated dogs and we entered the humane movement, the only reason dogs and cats are suffering is because of our neglect, our stupidity, our ego, our blah, 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 blah. So we owe it to them to fix this. We owe it to them. And the only way we're going to fix it is to work collectively. You all work with each other better. Get over your nonsense of Facebook bashing. Forget about who's open admission and who's not. Get over all that stuff, put it aside. Find a way to partner with each other. Find a way to connect to your communities, all your communities. Find a way to get past your own judgments. Pull everyone together. Build a freaking army of animal people. Keep adding more people, different looking and thinking people to it. And this will be done. We'll be done. We'll beat 2025. We'll be done before that. And we'll have to get new jobs. But I want to challenge you. I want to urge you to get out of your comfort zone, try something different, look outside of your community, meet different kinds of people from different places, allocate time, money, and resources. But I'm just looking at you because you held your hand as an executive director, and you two both in a line. And start thinking about how you program differently to make this part of your work. Not all your work, because the work you're currently doing is still incredibly important. Incredibly important. Just add this piece to it. You know, it's kind of like I exercise a lot, and you can go to the gym every day, but if you go home every day and eat pizza and Boston cream donuts, you're going to stay fat. So all the work you're doing is in community cats and intake diversion and open adoptions, all that stuff, incredibly important. Keep doing it. You're crushing it. We're all crushing it. Doing an amazing job. That's why the numbers keep going down. We suck at this other piece. We've done a bad job. I say we as a collective force. We've done a poor job at engaging people and thinking about people and making the community part of our job. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm begging and urging you to try to think about this and consider this as you move forward in this movement. This is how we're going to win. This is how we're going to change it. So that's all I got. So you can all yell at me now or ask questions, whatever you want.
So which dog did you keep and why?
I wish it wasn't about me. On contrary to what it seems like, I hate talking about myself. I kept Spook, the big white pit bull. Mostly he was just the coolest looking. Wish I had a better answer, but I was 10.
The fact that you knew his name.
Huh?
The fact that you mentioned his name.
Yeah, yep. Anyone else?
I know that's not what this topic is about, but I'm just curious because I do get a lot of dogs that come in with this title, and I'm curious as to how realistic it is with bait dogs. How many of those actually make it out?
So, coming from someone who worked in dogfighting, I will tell you this. It is highly, 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 highly unlikely, not impossible, that any of you have ever seen a bait dog unless you've worked on a dogfighting raid. Bait dogs die. So and the vast majority of dogs that got cropped ears and scars on the face weren't part of a big dog. Dog fighting happens, and it's awful, and I hate it, and I want it to end. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, I'm not saying none of you have seen it. But it happens a lot less than we like to sensationalize. And the vast majority of pit bulls that you see in the work that you do have never been involved in real dog fighting. They might be involved with a bunch of yahoos drinking beer and letting them fight in a park. That's not a dog fighting ring, that's just idiots in a park.
Yeah, I get a rescue.
Yeah.
It's almost like they tug at their heartstrings to get them to adopt that dog, and I'll say, oh, this was a bait dog. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like,
Yeah. It's possible. It's not likely, though. Like, so it is possible. You know what I mean? And dog fighting is a real thing, and it's awful, and you do see it in the area you guys are in, and it's awful. And I'm grateful, like I said, for the HSUS and the Best Friends and the A and local animal control agencies that work to snuff it out. But again, it's a smaller piece of what we deal with, but it exists.
it just makes it easier for me, like behaviorally, diagnostically, training-wise, to know, am I really dealing with something?
Yeah, so I think as an expert and a behavior person, what I always defer to is evaluate the dog you're looking at without the label. And maybe you're a little more diligent about the testing that you do, and maybe a little more patient. And I'm not saying just give everyone a dog who comes to the door. Maybe you spend a little more time with the person who wants that dog to make sure that they understand all the nuances and they're equipped, and they have you now as a resource. So imagine not only do they get this dog, they get you too. And if you build the right relationship, they'll use you. You know what I mean? And if they come back and talk about this in my session later, that's what we wanted them to do. I've never understood that. So when we get so mad about people bringing dogs to our facility, isn't that why we exist? Like, isn't that what we told them to do? So I think that piece is important, that they get you along with the dog as a resource.
Well, it's not so much a question as a comment, but we are a no-kill shelter, but we deal with other shelters in our area that don't feel that way. But I manage our social media, and I would love for the United States to go to no-kill because every day I have to face these. Barbara, can you please drive to Wisconsin and save this dog? What does it mean? He has an end date. They're going to kill him. And then they get mad at me because I say they're going to kill him, you know. But every day there are dozens of posts that end up back to me that somebody needs to do something because they're going to kill the dog. So how can I write these huge flamboyant profiles, I call them doggyographies, and do videos of the dogs, and I've dressed them up, which didn't really work. They ate the costume, so it wasn't that big a deal. But I do all of this in the positive. Let's get this older dog, this black lab, all of those dogs adopted. But the ones that, how do I fight the ones that everybody wants to adopt is the one they're going to kill. So it's almost like that's this magic word, but I refuse. I'm dug into the sand. I will not play on your sympathies. And I'm even having trouble trying to tell people, okay, this dog was rescued under a bad situation. You know, we just adopted out a dog that was shot, and the whole story is really sad. But she's happy now. She's in a good home. She's going to be fine. But I feel like the whole world is against me, telling, you know, the more sad stories we can tell.
Well, I blame the ASPCA. It was that Sarah McLachlan commercial did it all.
I can't get my really good dog adopted because
If there's anyone, I'm joking if there's anyone. Yeah, so I'm by no means, I don't even have Facebook, so I'm by no means a social media expert. But what I would say is stick to your guns and don't let, because it's true, like that was the thinking for a long time. If we don't tell sad stories, no one's going to give us money. If we don't tell sad stories, no one's going to adopt the dogs. It's not true. Mark, in LA, they stopped selling sad stories, and their adoptions went up. I know, and one of the programs that I helped create, and which still runs at the HSUS, Pets for Life program, I'm not as familiar with what they're doing now, but that was one of the things when we started was we were going to tell positive stories of the community too, and of the dogs, and we got more donations. So I think, again, it's a challenging thing. It's scary because we think if we don't pull on people's heartstrings, no one's going to help us. I think people want to hear success. I know I get tired. Every time I see one of those commercials on TV, I change the channel. You know what I mean? But if I saw a more positive one, so be a trailblazer. Say, we're going to, this is just my opinion, but to me, keep sharing the positive stories and keep doing what you're doing and force other people to come along with you. And more importantly, track it, measure it, use data, and when it works, prove it to people. Because when I started doing this work saying be nice to poor people, like everyone was like, this guy's an idiot, don't listen to him, he's nuts. When I built a program that was successful and working, and then all of a sudden magically people started listening to me. I was saying it for 10 years before that and no one gave a crap. So I say keep telling your positive story, but track it, measure it.
that's a good. We track all of our adoptions and everything. I don't. Our director does a really good job of it.
Yeah.
Compared to what I've heard, she needs a gold star.
Well, we should connect. We have social media experts. Our best friends we connect.
I never thought about looking at it in terms of, I'm really proud of the fact that since I started working with her, the adoptions are up, but I never thought that I could say, maybe the adoptions are up because those cute pictures and and the little doggyographies that, you know, describe the personality of the dog and making everything cute. And also posting those dogs that were adopted 5 years ago. I'm still posting their pictures when their parents send them in.
I think you've answered your own
So
question.
I didn't think that I needed to do my own porn and say,
Yeah.
maybe this is helping.
Yeah, you're winning.
Okay.
Am I close to time? We'll take one more. She's been
Here,
waiting.
I just want to say that we're all in this together, right? And we have shelters, we have rescues, we have specialty rescues. We're the Aero Fund, we help the severe torture, abuse, and neglect of animals. There is a need for us all. We all have a piece of the pie, and we all do need to work together. And that's you know, that's something that we all, everyone in this room, I know there are people in this room that are just, they have an issue here or an issue here with this person. If we don't pull it together, guys, and let me do my piece of the pie, or us, you know, our group, I don't mean me, you do yours and make adopting that 5-year lab fix the most wonderful thing in the world. I mean, we just have to pull it together, and we're all needed.
Well, that's what Best Friends wants to help do, coalition building. So I think I'm probably out of time, yeah?
Yeah, let's give Teddy a big hand.